So I actually started playing the bass officially at the age of 8, but I was really into the sound of the bass for a very, very long time. Before that, in fact, the story goes that when I was 2 or 3 years old, I used to go around, run around the house humming bass parts to jazz records that my dad was playing on the stereo, and that continued on through the Beatles. My sister bought all the Beatles records, and I knew all the bass lines that Paul McCartney played, and on and on and on. So I was really into the instrument, just the sound of the instrument, even though I didn't really, think about playing, or really hadn't considered trying to play the instrument. I just really enjoyed the sound of it. I enjoyed music in general, and I was a kid, so I was out playing in the yard most of the day. But finally, at age 8, my brother just happened to bring an upright bass home, a double bass, and he was rehearsing with the middle school orchestra for a concert that was coming up, and he brought the bass home to practice. And I walked into the music room and I saw this huge instrument there lying on its side, and I just kind of stared at it for the longest time, and then I plucked a couple of notes on it, and that was it for me. I was hooked. I just loved the resonant sound, and I was so familiar with that sound already, and I just took to it immediately. In fact, my brother had been playing piano for about a year by that point, and approached me and said, if you really are into this instrument, why don't we start practicing together and we'll try to learn some jazz tunes. And my dad could play along. It'd be a lot of fun. So that's kind of how we got started. And I really never looked back. I would practice several hours a day on the upright bass, and then Ray and I would get together and play together. And sometimes my dad would bring the horn, and we just had a great time. And I actually didn't start playing electric bass until about 8 or 9 years later. I was so into the upright, and I loved Charlie Mingus. I loved Ray Brown, Scott LaFaro, all the main guys, and I tried to become them basically on the upright. And so it was really an amazing experience growing up. So my first amp was actually a Gibson Thor, and I don't know how many of you have heard of that one, but it was actually a very cool little amp. It was actually reminiscent of a B15. It had about the same amount of power. It was a tube power amp, and it had two 6L6s in it. It was very, very good sounding amp. And it was a combo. It had two 10-inch speakers in a sealed cabinet. Really good sounding amp. And I played all upright through it. As I said before, I had not started playing electric bass at that point, but my upright sounded incredible through that amp. And I only wish that I could have actually played electric through it. I think it would have sounded great. Cool little amp. One or two for me. One of them was very early on. When I was a teenager, my brother and I were playing around St. Louis and doing very well, playing a lot of different clubs, and we played a place called BB's. And I actually wrote a song about the place later on, but we were playing that club a lot, and the owner of the club was interested in starting to bring in some big major names in the jazz world into the club, and called Ray and I and asked if we would want to play with James Moody, and which of course we wanted to play with James Moody. So that was one of the biggest thrills for me as a teenager, and we went on to play with James several times, with Sonny Stitt, with Freddie Hubbard, and so those days were just everything was exciting back in those days. That was a very exciting time for me. And then jumping ahead, when I moved to New York, I actually got a call from Peter Erskine, who I had just done a clinic with in St. Louis before I moved to New York. And he mentioned that Eddie Gomez was wanting to leave Steps Ahead, and they were holding auditions for bass players, and he wanted me to come and play. And so I went in and auditioned with the band. I got to meet Peter. Well, I got to see Peter again and meet Mike Minieri and meet Warren Bernhardt and meet Michael Brecker. And that was just one of the most incredible experiences for me. And then the next thing I knew, I was playing with them. I was auditioning and playing music with these guys and hearing the incredible Michael Brecker. And got a call a couple of days later and had the gig. And boy, you talk about an exciting time. That was my first big gig in New York. And I was in Europe with those guys, traveling around with these icons that I've listened to for years and years and years. So that's a couple of very exciting stories, and I will always remember those times. Well, one that definitely comes to mind when I moved to New York in late 84, 1984, I got a call from my dear friend Dave Weckl, who had been living in New York for a while. And he was rehearsing with Bill Connors, the great guitarist, original guitarist from Return to Forever. And they were actually working on a record project. And apparently, the bassist that was doing the rehearsing was not available. And Dave asked if I would like to come in and play. And so of course, I wanted to. And I went in and did the rehearsal with Bill and Dave. And there was an immediate chemistry there. And I think the three of us knew it right away. And so I became the bassist for the trio. And we ended up recording a very iconic fusion record called Step It by Bill Connors. And in fact, I still have fans coming to me all the time, showing me the record and asking me to sign the record. And so it really became quite a big deal. Sort of an underground record, but it's amazing how that project took off. But anyway, the interesting part of the collaborative aspect of that was just how all of us kind of invented our parts. Bill had, you know, the basic outline of the songs finished, completed, and had them charted out when we started rehearsing. But Dave and I both put basically our hearts and souls into creating parts that would enhance and really bring out these incredible melodies and chord structures and rhythms that Bill had in mind. And so that to me felt like a true collaboration in the real sense of the word. And most recently, I've been doing a collaboration with, once again, my dear friend Dave Weckl. And this is a band that we're actually co-leading. And it is based on music that I wrote for a recording project that I did last year called Stories. And Dave played on the record, as well as Bill Evans, Mike Stern, Randy Brecker, and a bunch of incredible musicians. And Dave and I got together to mix the record. And about halfway through the mix, decided that it would be a good idea to take this music out and play it live. And so we've been doing that for the last year, and we have done a couple of European tours, West Coast tour, and we have some dates coming up, so look out for us. I was doing a short East Coast tour with Mike Stern about 9 years ago, I guess it was. And we were in northern Florida playing a venue there, but Mike and I were asked to do a guitar bass clinic at a college there during the day. And so we showed up, and they had a twin reverb amp for Mike, and they had a Mark bass rig for me. And I had never seen them before. I thought it looked very interesting, but I didn't really have any time either to tweak the amp to get the amp ready to play through. So we were a little late arriving. So I just basically set the amp flat, and I got a level with Mike, and we were announced, and we kicked it off. We started playing, and I remember just about 4 or 8 bars into the first tune, just feeling really comfortable with what was coming out of the amp, and just noticing that I was hearing a lot of things from my Federa that I had never noticed through an amplifier live. And we were not really in the best room. It was one of those big band kind of rooms, rehearsal rooms at a college, and yet I was just hearing everything crystal clear, everything I was playing. And I was so impressed with it that I basically had them move that rig to the venue where we were playing that night, and I used the Mark bass stuff for the concert that night. And I contacted Mark bass shortly after. Well, I've had a chance to play a lot of models in the Mark bass line. I guess my standard Rode rig would be the Little Mark Tube 800 and the 104 HF speaker cabinet. I think because I really like the subtleness of the tube preamp. It works really well in various venue situations where you just need a little bit more warmth or a little less warmth. I probably use that control more than the EQ section of the amp, which is basically in the flat position most of the time for me. The sound, just the inherent sound that comes out of that head through that speaker is just such an amazingly organic kind of sensibility, and I really don't have to do much with it at all, if anything. Well, I think the most special thing to me about this company is that they have such an incredible product, but they want to keep making it better. And the reason they want to keep making it better is for the musician, for the player. They want the player to be more and more satisfied with the product and to be happier on stage, to have a better feeling, for things to be more convenient. You know, whatever the aspect of the improvement is, they want to keep searching, and that is a very rare thing, and I really respect them for that. Especially since, you know, that's the goal of the musician as well, to always try to find something different, to try to move on and always moving forward, trying different things. So I think in that sense, we are just one big family, and we have the same goal in mind, and I think we're achieving it. And I am just so glad to be associated with these guys. I think it's an incredible product, and I think it's just going to get better and better.